Good morning, everybody.
Get over against the wall with your friend.
That's you in there, boy?
Although Mayberry seemed like a peaceful paradise, the Andy Griffith Show hid plenty of behind-the-scenes conflict and drama. From struggling with roles to clashing with co-stars, here are 5 actors who actually hated their time on the series. Number 1. Frances Bavier, the prisoner of Aunt B.
Did you vacuum the hall?
No.
Get to it.
For 8 full seasons, Frances Bavier brought life to Aunt B, cementing her status as one of the most beloved matriarchs in television history. Her portrayal was so convincing that she won an Emmy Award in 1967. Adored by viewers as the quintessential kind-hearted homemaker who kept the Taylor household running with fried chicken, warm apple pies, and gentle rustic wisdom. Yet, the reality of Frances Bavier's life was a stark contrast to the domestic bliss she projected. Behind the scenes, she was profoundly miserable, harboring a deep resentment toward the very character that made her famous because she felt Aunt B had completely cannibalized her true identity as an artist. Before stepping into the apron of Aunt B, Bavier had been a highly respected and sophisticated stage actress in New York City, boasting years of prestigious theater experience. She had graced Broadway stages and built a diverse, serious career, playing a wide range of complex roles. However, once the phenomenon of Mayberry took hold, all of that prior acclaim seemed to evaporate into thin air. In a candid and revealing 1972 interview with Carolina Camera, Bavier finally voiced her long-held frustrations. She confessed that playing Aunt B for a decade had made it virtually impossible for the public or producers to see her as anything other than a domestic servant. The praise she received was always directed at the fictional character she had crafted, never at her as a person or as the classically trained actress she actually was. This professional dissatisfaction bled into her personal interactions on set, creating a toxic work environment. Reports in TV Guide highlighted that Bavier openly resented the dynamic of the show, specifically how Andy Griffith and Don Knotts were given the best comedic material while she was forced into the background. She felt demeaned, reduced to a prop who simply served food and set up jokes for the men to get the laughs. The psychological toll was so severe that she reportedly sought therapy to cope with her feelings of subordination and lack of creative fulfillment. This cocktail of being typecast and feeling professionally underutilized brewed a toxicity that worsened with every passing season. Howard Morris, who famously played the wild Ernest T. Bass and also directed 8 episodes of the series, described the experience of directing Bavier as akin to walking through a minefield. He recalled that even a minor technical request, such as asking her to move 3 inches to secure a better camera angle, could trigger an explosion of anger. Bavier was incredibly sensitive about how she was photographed and how her character was depicted in the scripts. Directors like Morris had to learn to navigate her moods with extreme caution, carefully choosing every word to avoid setting off a temperamental outburst. The tension was further exacerbated by a fundamental personality clash with the show's star. Andy Griffith thrived on a loose, playful set and loved pulling practical jokes to keep the mood light between takes. Bavier, however, absolutely despised them. She viewed such behavior as unprofessional and disrespectful to the craft of acting. Where Griffith saw harmless fun to bond the cast, Bavier saw yet another indication that she and her profession were not being taken seriously. This friction between the two stars created a Cold War that lasted for decades. When the cameras stopped rolling, the warmth of the Taylor kitchen vanished, and the atmosphere became fraught with difficulty. Other cast members felt they had to constantly walk on eggshells around her, living in fear of her unpredictable reactions. The feud ran so deep that it extended well beyond the life of the series. In the mid-1980s, when Andy Griffith and Ron Howard attempted to pay an unannounced visit to her home in Siler City, North Carolina, Bavier refused to let them in. She wouldn't even open the door to speak to the men who had been her on-screen family for years. This rejection followed her repeated refusals to participate in the highly anticipated Return to Mayberry reunion movie. Reports suggest that her dislike of Griffith was not a new development, but something that had existed from the very beginning of production. The resentment was foundational, festering and growing stronger over time. After the show concluded, Bavier withdrew from Hollywood and settled in Siler City, a small town that ironically resembled Mayberry. There, she lived a life of solitude, deliberately isolating herself from her former co-stars. She became a recluse, rarely granting interviews, and strictly avoiding the fan conventions and reunions that her colleagues embraced. This isolation was partly a personal choice, but it was also a tragic consequence of her success. The role of Aunt Bee had become a cage, making it impossible for her to move forward with her career. Casting directors simply could not see her as anyone else. It was only in 1989, as Bavière lay dying of cancer, that she and Griffith finally found a semblance of peace. In a final phone call, she apologized to him, admitting it was her fault they hadn't gotten along and expressing regret for the lost years of friendship. While Griffith later publicly claimed they had always gotten along, the overwhelming evidence of their history suggests otherwise. For 10 years, she played America's favorite aunt, but privately, she was a woman struggling with deep resentment and frustration, making her reality far removed from the warm family atmosphere viewers cherished. Number 2. Eleanor Donahue, the mismatch of Ellie Walker.
My special soda for special people I want to show how I feel about.
When Eleanor Donahue joined the cast in 1960 as Ellie Walker, expectations were incredibly high. As the lady pharmacist destined to be Sheriff Andy Taylor's first serious love interest, she was positioned for success. Fresh off a triumphant 6-year run as Betty Anderson on the hit show Father Knows Best, Donahue was a star in her own right, earning billing in the opening credits alongside Andy Griffith himself, an honor not even accorded to Don Knotts initially. However, this promising arrangement collapsed quickly. After filming just 12 episodes, Donahue requested to be released from her 3-year contract. Years later, Donahue offered insight into her abrupt departure, revealing that the transition was far more difficult than anyone realized. Moving from playing a teenager on Father Knows Best to portraying an adult professional woman engaged in romantic storylines was emotionally overwhelming for her. She described herself as feeling like a bird out of a nest, thrust into the world, without having fully grown her feathers. At just 23 years old, she simply didn't feel capable or mature enough to handle the demands of the role. Compounding her professional anxiety was the fact that she was enduring personal turmoil in her private life, which made her desperate for a break. However, the most glaring issue was the total absence of chemistry between Donahue and Griffith. Their romantic scenes, intended to be charming and sweet, felt incredibly awkward, uncomfortable, and forced, a tension that was palpable even to audiences watching at home. Donahue was acutely aware that something was wrong, and she wasn't alone in that assessment. Andy Griffith later confessed that he had always struggled with displaying affection on screen and found it difficult to maintain relationships with women, both in his fiction and his reality. Consequently, when Donahue asked to leave after the first season, Griffith did not fight to keep her. Griffith later shouldered the blame for the failure, admitting that the show's writers were inept at writing for women in general, and specifically didn't know how to write for Donahue's character. He graciously insisted that the fault lay with the production, not with the actress. Yet, Donahue sensed that the problem ran deeper than just poor scripts. Years later, upon running into Griffith at a party, she approached him feeling a need to apologize for how things had ended. While he was kind and reiterated his manager Dick Lincoln's sentiment that they simply hadn't known how to write for her, Donahue maintained that the core issue was a lack of spark. She noted that when Annetta Corsaw joined the cast as Helen Crump, in later seasons, Griffith had no trouble relating to her. Reports indicate that this was likely because Griffith and Corsaw shared a passionate off-screen romance, which naturally translated into a much more convincing chemistry on camera. Despite the difficulties, Donahue held on to one sweet memory from her brief tenure. For a Christmas episode, producers asked her to sing "Away in a Manger" as a duet with Andy. Having given up singing, she was terrified and usually avoided such requests like the plague. Griffith, recognizing her fear, was incredibly kind and guided her through the performance. Yet, even that moment of kindness couldn't bridge the fundamental gap between the actress and the role. The character of Ellie Walker vanished without a trace after 12 episodes. The show never offered an explanation for her departure or mentioned what became of her. This marked the beginning of a recurring struggle for the series, which cycled through multiple actresses attempting to play Sheriff Taylor's love interest before finally finding success with Annetta Corsaw. Donahue went on to enjoy a successful career with roles in The Odd Couple, Star Trek, and countless others, But her time in Mayberry remained a confusing and difficult chapter in her professional life. Number 3. Howard McNear, the silent suffering of Floyd the Barber.
Where's the bullet?
In his left shirt pocket.
Why?
Well, this is an emergency.
The story of Howard McNear stands apart from the others because his struggle wasn't born of hatred for the role, but of sheer physical endurance. Unlike his unhappy co-stars, McNear absolutely loved playing Floyd the Barber. However, the price he paid to remain on the show made his experience one of the most physically and emotionally grueling of anyone in the cast. A veteran of radio and film, McNear was already an established talent, known as the voice of Doc Adams on Gunsmoke, and for appearances in Elvis Presley films, before he brought his unique eccentricity to Mayberry in 1961. Don Knotts famously noted that playing Floyd wasn't much of a stretch for McNear, as his real-life personality was just as quirky and delightful. Tragedy struck in early 1963, during the show's 3rd season, when McNear suffered a massive, debilitating stroke. The event left the entire left side of his body paralyzed. He could not walk unassisted and lost the use of his left arm and hand. For a year and a half, Floyd the Barber was absent from Mayberry, missing 40 episodes, and given the severity of his condition, nobody expected him to ever work again. However, the show missed his presence. Producer Aaron Rubin, while writing a script in need of comic relief, lamented to colleagues, "Boy, do I wish we had Howard." This sparked the idea to call McNear's home, where his wife revealed that returning to work would be a godsend for his morale. Andy Griffith personally made the call, asking McNear to return despite his physical limitations. McNear agreed, even though he could barely stand. To make this possible, the production crew implemented extraordinary accommodations. They constructed a special chair that allowed McNear to remain seated for the majority of his scenes. When he did need to be at the barber chair, they built a hidden stand behind it to prop him up, allowing him to use his functioning right hand to pantomime cutting hair. Creative staging became the norm. Post-stroke scenes often featured Floyd sitting on a bench outside the shop, rather than working inside. Viewers would see his paralyzed left hand holding a newspaper or resting lifelessly in his lap, while he animatedly used only his right arm to speak. Editing tricks were also employed. One episode might feature the sound of Floyd walking into the courthouse, only to cut immediately to a shot of him already seated. Shots of him standing or using both hands were rare and meticulously staged to hide his disability. Initially, McNear's mind remained as sharp as ever, his memory for lines and impeccable comic timing untouched by the stroke. For 2 years, he persevered. But eventually, the toll became too great, and his condition began to deteriorate further. Jack Dodson, who played Howard Sprague, witnessed the heartbreaking end of McNear's tenure. During the filming of one of his final scenes, McNear simply could not remember his lines. He tried repeatedly, growing increasingly frustrated and anxious as his own mind betrayed him. Dodson described watching McNear's despair as the most painful experience he ever had on a set, seeing a brilliant actor struggle with tasks that had once been second nature. After that scene, McNear left and never returned. His final appearance in 1967's Goober's Contest was a shadow of his former self. Floyd spoke from a parked car, and an obvious body double was used to drive the vehicle away because McNear was too weak to perform even that simple action. Less than 2 years later, on January 3, 1969, Howard McNear passed away at age 63 from pneumonia complications following another stroke. At his funeral, the eulogy was delivered by his friend Parley Bear. Producer Richard Linka recalled it as a unique service where laughter exceeded tears, as friends shared stories of McNear with dignity and affection. While McNear loved his character, his final years on the show were a testament to suffering and dedication, marked by the physical toll of working through paralysis and the emotional devastation of watching his own abilities fade away. Number 4. Jack Burns, The Impossible Replacement.
Andy, whether you want to believe it or not, you're in danger on this picnic.
Following Don Knotts' departure in 1965, the producers of The Andy Griffith Show faced a terrifying, impossible task, replacing the iconic Barney Fife. Their solution was to hire comedian Jack Burns to play Deputy Warren Ferguson, the nephew of Floyd the Barber. Burns was no amateur. He had a solid comedy pedigree, having worked with legend George Carlin and the prestigious Second City Troupe. On paper, He appeared to be the perfect candidate to fill the void. In practice, however, the experiment was a disaster from the very beginning. Warren Ferguson survived only 11 episodes in the 6th season before being unceremoniously dumped from the show. Like Ellie Walker before him, Warren simply vanished without explanation. No farewell, no mention of where he went, just gone. Burns later admitted he felt uncomfortable in the role from day one, fully aware he was attempting to fill shoes that were simply too big for anyone. The audience had a deep emotional connection to Barney Fife's specific mix of nervous energy, unearned ego, and hidden vulnerability. By contrast, Warren Ferguson came across merely as incompetent, lacking the endearing qualities that made Barney's mistakes forgivable. The writers were equally lost, unsure of how to make this new character function within the established world. Their attempts to recreate the bumbling deputy routine with Burns felt like a pale, hollow imitation of what Knotts had done so effortlessly. It became quickly apparent to Andy Griffith and the production team that the essential ingredient, chemistry, was completely missing. The magical rhythm that existed between Griffith and Knotts was replaced by scenes that felt forced, awkward, and devoid of spark. Burns looked back on the experience with regret, acknowledging he wasn't right for the part. The pressure of stepping into a massive hit show to replace a beloved television icon was overwhelming. Although the cast and crew remained polite, Burns could palpably feel that he was failing to measure up to the standard set before him. Recognizing the failure, the producers decided to cut their losses after just 11 episodes. Warren was written out, and the show wisely chose to proceed without a permanent deputy rather than force another mismatch. The failure of the Warren Ferguson character served as a stark reminder of just how irreplaceable Don Knotts truly was. For Jack Burns, what should have been a dream job turned into a difficult, doomed endeavor that left him with a career scar. Number 5. Betty Lynn, the neglected girlfriend.
You did!
Yes, and I'll do it again.
Betty Lynn spent 5 years from 1961 to 1966 playing Thelma Lou, the sweet, patient, and devoted girlfriend of Barney Fife. On screen, viewers adored her steadfast loyalty as she endured Barney's eccentricities, often watching her try to enjoy a nice dinner only to be interrupted by some trivial emergency that Barney blew out of proportion. While Lynn loved the cast and the show personally, her professional experience was marred by a deep frustration she rarely voiced: the chronic underutilization of her talent. The central issue was the shocking lack of screen time and development afforded to her character. Despite being a regular for 5 seasons, Thelma Lou appeared in a mere 26 episodes. To put that in perspective, that averages out to about 5 episodes a year for a character who was supposedly the main love interest of the co-lead. The writers gave her absolutely nothing to do other than wait for Barney. She had no stated profession, no family background, no hobbies, and seemingly no existence outside of her relationship with Barney. This was particularly galling because Lynn was a seasoned actress with film and theater credentials before arriving in Mayberry. She had the skills and experience to carry complex storylines, yet she was reduced to functioning as a glorified prop in Barney's narratives. Her episodes followed a tedious, repetitive formula. Barney would make plans, his pride or job would ruin them, and Thelma Lou would inevitably forgive him. In later years, while always speaking graciously about the show, Lynn would occasionally reveal her disappointment regarding how limited her role truly was. She longed for scenes that explored who Thelma Lou was as a person, but the writers showed zero interest in developing their female characters. Her exit was as unceremonious as her tenure. When Don Knotts left in 1965 to pursue film, Thelma Lou simply ceased to exist in the show's universe. There was no explanation. Did she move? Did they break up? Even when Knotts returned for guest spots, Thelma Lou was notably absent, as if the last 5 years had been erased. It wasn't until the 1986 TV movie Return to Mayberry that Lynn finally reprised the role, marrying Barney in a plotline that reunited them after 2 decades. However, by then, the damage to her career potential was done. Lynn spent the intervening years in small parts, never capitalizing on the massive exposure of the show because the show had given her so little to showcase. The experience of being on a legendary hit yet being professionally stifled left her With complex feelings, she appreciated the fans' love for Thelma Lou, but she carried the heavy knowledge that she had been capable of delivering so much more than just a sweet smile. In her later years, she moved to Mount Airy, North Carolina, Andy Griffith's hometown, and became a fixture of the Mayberry tribute scene, greeting fans and celebrating the show. She maintained a public face of warmth, never speaking a harsh word, especially about her friend Don Knotts. Yet those close to the situation understood that beneath the nostalgia lay a career that fell short of its promise, largely because the Andy Griffith Show used her presence without ever valuing her full talent. Conclusion: the reality behind the fiction. The Andy Griffith Show remains a titan of television history, a beacon of small-town values and gentle humor that continues to comfort millions in reruns. But like any workplace, the set of Mayberry was not immune to the complexities of human conflict, disappointment, and suffering. The show's legacy is built on the backs of actors who often endured great difficulty to create that magic. Frances Bavier delivered a brilliant performance while harboring deep resentment. Eleanor Donahue felt out of place and fled the production. Howard McNear fought through devastating paralysis to keep us laughing, while Jack Burns crumbled under the weight of impossible expectations. Betty Lynn maintained a smile through years of professional neglect. Rather than diminishing the show, understanding these struggles makes their performances even more extraordinary. They suppressed their own pain and frustration to build a world that felt real and safe for us, even when their own reality was far from the idyllic paradise they portrayed. If this deep dive into the hidden history of a classic show has offered you a new perspective on Mayberry, please like this video and subscribe for more fascinating stories about the television that defined our culture. Thanks for watching.